Imagine looking up at the night sky. For decades, we've just seen that vast expanse as this peaceful sanctuary, a place for pure exploration and scientific wonder, right? But right now, a massive shift in national security is literally unfolding right above our heads. Space has completely changed. It's no longer just a quiet backdrop for satellites. It is a highly contested, actively monitored warfighting domain. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to completely decode India's strategic response to this new reality, taking a really close look at the groundbreaking Antariksha Abhyas 2024 wargame.
To truly get why this matters right now, we have to ask kind of a terrifying question. What actually happens if our satellites just go dark? Picture a single day without GPS. Modern aviation? Instantly grounded. Global banking networks that rely on precise satellite timestamps to process your money? Completely frozen. Supply chains would collapse, and crucially, military communications and border surveillance would be instantly blacked out, leaving national defenses totally blind. So this isn't science fiction anymore. Defending space isn't just about protecting expensive metal in orbit. It's absolutely crucial for the very survival of modern civilization and national sovereignty.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the new warfighting domain, then move into mapping the threat matrix, decode the Antariksha Abhyas 2024 wargame, look at India's space defense network, tackle the vulnerabilities and strategic fixes, and wrap up with a concept mastery revision. Let's get into it.
Part 1. The new warfighting domain, the invisible backbone.
Okay, let's dive straight in. The tricky thing about space tech is that it's inherently dual use. The exact same satellite that helps you navigate your car to the grocery store can be used to guide a precision missile. That means deterrence and resilience are absolutely non-negotiable. Now, when we say space defense, forget the Hollywood movies with laser battles. Real space defense is a highly complex suite of capabilities. It's about safeguarding the satellites, sure, but also the ground stations, the data networks, and literally every space-dependent operation from any interference, whether that's hostile or totally accidental. And a huge piece of this puzzle is space situational awareness, or SSA, because, well, you can't defend against what you can't see. Defense means actively tracking space debris, keeping an eye on hostile movements, and securing our vital communication and navigation services 24/7.
Part 2. Mapping the threat matrix, why we are vulnerable.
So what exactly are we up against out there? We can break the threat matrix down into two main buckets. On one side, we have non-military threats. These are the natural, uncontrolled hazards. We're talking atmospheric anomalies, random radiation bursts, micrometeorites, and literally thousands of pieces of space junk zipping around at insane speeds that could accidentally shred a multi-million-dollar satellite. But on the other side, we have deliberate military threats. These are highly technical, intentional moves by adversaries. Think cyber attacks on sensors, hostile tracking operations, laser dazzling meant to literally blind a satellite's cameras, or jamming the uplinks and downlinks to completely sever our connection to our orbital assets. And within those military threats, one of the sneakiest and most alarming is RPO, or Rendezvous and Proximity Operations. It sounds highly technical, but just think of it as covertly tailgating and tampering with a car on a pitch-black highway. An adversary launches a satellite that quietly sneaks right up to one of ours in orbit. Once it's close, it can shadow our assets to steal data, physically mess with its optics, or in a really extreme scenario, force it to deorbit and burn up in the atmosphere. It is silent, it's highly deniable, and it is incredibly dangerous. So boiling it down, modern space warfare really takes three major forms. First, anti-satellite, or ASAT weapons. These are your direct ascent or orbital missiles that physically blow things up. Second, adversarial surveillance and reconnaissance, using high-res optics and signals intelligence to basically steal a nation's operational secrets from way up above. And third, cyber and electronic threats. These are the ones that silently cripple command networks, break encryption systems, and sever data links without firing a single physical shot. Part 3. Antariksha Abhyas 2024, the strategic response. Now, knowing the sheer scale of all these vulnerabilities we just mapped out, India realized pretty quickly that passive defense just wasn't going to cut it anymore. And that brings us to Antariksha Abhyas 2024, which recently took place in New Delhi. This was a massive milestone, India's very first dedicated space defense wargame. Led by the Defense Space Agency, or DSA, this absolutely was not your standard military drill. This was a serious, dedicated effort to operationalize India's national security objectives in space. The whole goal was to take space-based capabilities out of the lab and integrate them directly into joint military operations. So what did they actually do? They designed this wargame to simulate the absolute worst-case scenarios. Participants weren't just sitting around debating theory. They actively tackled complex threats: kinetic missile strikes, non-kinetic interference, devastating cyber intrusions, and counterspace operations. And the real game changer here was the integration. It forced India's tri-services, the Army, Navy, and Air Force, to work perfectly in sync with space sector entities. It validated the exact operational procedures needed so that if a satellite gets compromised tomorrow, the military, strategic, and civilian responses are instantaneous and perfectly coordinated.
Part 4. India's Space Defense Network. Institutional Evolution.
Now, a successful wargame doesn't just happen overnight in a vacuum. It takes years of building a robust institutional architecture to turn isolated agencies into a unified defense network. And you could see this evolution really clearly. Back in 2010, India set up the Integrated Space Cell to coordinate defense needs with ISRO and DRDO. Fast forward to 2018, the threat landscape had gotten much worse, which led to the creation of the Defense Space Agency, built specifically to integrate those tri-services operations. Today, the ecosystem is huge. We've got the Defense Space Research Organization, or DSRO, focusing heavily on applied R&D for threat mitigation and secure payloads. And right alongside it, the operational NETRA SSA program is actively using upgraded radar and optical networks to keep a very close watch on space debris and hostile satellites.
Part 5. Vulnerabilities and Strategic Fixes, the Way Forward. But let's be real, building institutions is only half the battle. We have to be objective and look at the structural gaps that still exist in India's preparedness. And looking at the systemic challenges right next to the required strategic fixes is incredibly revealing. For example, a major vulnerability right now is limited private capital and high-risk tech. The fix? Aggressively promote private participation in areas like quantum-safe communications and SSA sensors. We also see these functional silos separating ISRO, DRDO, and the armed forces. To fix that, we need to institutionalize close daily collaboration between them. Slow defense procurement cycles are definitely leaving us exposed, which means we urgently need faster acquisition procedures driven by a comprehensive national defense space strategy. And finally, to fix fragmented communications, India has to fully integrate military SATCOM, intelligence, and navigation assets into unified joint battle networks.
Part 6. Concept Mastery Revision.
All right, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, from orbital threats to high-level national security policy. So let's pull all these threads together for a quick rapid-fire recap. First, always remember, space is no longer a sanctuary, it is a highly contested domain. The threats out there are both kinetic, like those ASAT weapons, and non-kinetic, like cyber attacks and RPO tailgating. India's big strategic response was Antariksha Abhyas, 2024, successfully validating joint operations under the Defense Space Agency. Going forward, India desperately needs a national defense space strategy to speed up procurement. And finally, securing the cosmos is going to rely heavily on bringing in the private sector and expanding that NETRA Space Situational Awareness program.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. We've seen today how space technology is inherently dual use. As India's private space sector absolutely booms, launching more civilian and commercial satellites than ever before, the line between a commercial asset and a national security target is getting really blurry. So, how exactly should India balance this vital, rapid commercial growth with the urgent, highly secretive demands of national defense? It's a massive puzzle of governance, technology, and security, and honestly, it's going to define the next decade of geopolitics. Keep that question in mind the next time you look up at the night sky. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.